Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into an absolutely fascinating reflection on botany, cultivation, and mindfulness. We're looking at a gardener's recent documentation of their tropical gardening journey, and honestly, it is surprisingly packed with hands-on science and some really profound life lessons.
Now, this isn't just some casual weekend garden update. We are unpacking a gardener's 900th blog post. Yeah, you heard that right, 900. That's a massive milestone, and it represents a remarkably deep well of trial, error, and hard-earned experience. So it's the perfect opportunity for us to step back, look at the data, and share the incredibly practical and therapeutic lessons they've learned over the last 100 posts. All right, here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with building a living laboratory, move into propagation and cultivation tactics, then tackle diagnosing plant growth stress. After that, we're looking at embracing resilient local flora, finding the sanctuary of routine, and finally, planting seeds for the future.
So let's jump right into Section 1, Building a Living Laboratory. Okay, let's dive into this. Over the past 3 months, this gardener was dealing with a pretty brutal rainy season, plus a few bouts of poor health, which literally forced a massive pivot. You see, the old approach was super external, going on field trips to hunt down new plant species. But those constraints forced the focus inside. The home garden morphed into an actual working, living lab, buzzing with totally hands-on experiments. It's a great reminder of how strict limitations can kind of force our best innovations, right?
And in this new lab setup, they struck gold with some incredibly practical containers. I mean, who would have guessed that your basic EPS foam cups would completely outperform expensive nursery gear? But they do. They lock in moisture and regulate temperature way better than your standard plastic pots or recycled cardboard. Combine those with literally just cheap plastic plates acting as saucers to handle erratic tropical weather, swinging from intense heat waves to sudden downpours, and you've got an incredibly efficient, budget-friendly setup.
Now, you absolutely have to see this dual-layer mulching system they came up with. It's genius. The bottom layer is packed with coconut coir, and the top layer is covered in leca balls, that's lightweight, expanded clay aggregate, for those who might not use it often. This combo acts as the ultimate defense mechanism. It perfectly stops those heavy tropical rains from splashing all your soil away, while totally trapping the vital moisture your plants desperately need during a heat wave.
Moving right along to Section 2, Propagation and Cultivation Tactics.
This is where things get really fun, and where the gardener really dialed in the science of multiplying their greenery at home. Let's look at the coleus plant. Their propagation procedure is super simple, but incredibly effective. First, you take your cuttings and pre-soak them in a diluted rooting hormone for exactly 24 hours. Then, just pop those cuttings into some regular jars of water. Boom. Within days, you'll literally see this wildly bushy root system explode into existence.
Of course, it's not always a home run on the first try, which highlights why trial and error in this lab is so crucial. Take the Brazilian tea shrub. At first, trying to propagate it using entire, long stems yielded pretty dismal results. But as soon as they pivoted to single-node propagation, just isolating one specific growth point, the success rate absolutely skyrocketed. It really goes to show it's all about finding exactly what makes each specific species tick.
Now, when it came to starting from seed, they made a really strategic pivot, bringing in affordable, everyday stuff like sesame and common mustard. Honestly, these were the absolute rock stars of the lab. Because they have massively high germination rates, they are perfect for running fast microclimate experiments. Plus, let's be real, it just let the gardener enjoy the sheer, unadulterated fun of mass propagation without spending a fortune. It's that instant gratification we all kind of crave as growers,
All right, on to Section 3, Diagnosing Plant Growth Stress.
Now, as you guys know, a living lab isn't just about celebrating the wins. It's heavily about troubleshooting and putting on your plant detective hat. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when microclimates are just slightly off. By paying close attention, the gardener spotted 2 big issues. The Thai basil, sesame, and variegated Mexican mint were all suffering from etiolation because their microclimates simply lacked full sunlight. On the flip side, the holy basil was showing mild interveinal chlorosis. The culprit? An iron deficiency, completely driven by heavy, water-pooling alkaline clay soil. It really hammers home how absolutely critical it is to match the right microclimate and potting mix.
Just to quickly refresh on the botany here, etiolation is that abnormal growth where the stems get super long, weak, and oddly pale. The plant is literally stretching itself to the limit, desperately hunting for some light. So take a quick look at your own houseplants right now.
If they're looking a bit leggy or stretched out, you might really want to double-check if they're actually getting the sunlight they need. And then there's intravenous chlorosis. This is when the leaves start turning yellow specifically between the green veins. It's basically a massive red flag signaling an iron deficiency. But here's the kicker. The iron might actually be right there in the soil. The issue is that heavy, waterlogged, alkaline clay soil literally locks the iron up, making it completely impossible for the roots to actually absorb it.
Which brings us to Section 4, embracing resilient local flora. So, taking all those stressful growth lessons to heart, the gardeners started pivoting the collection towards some incredibly tough local perennials. We're talking about creeping Malaysian false pimpernel, Singapore rhododendrons, black nightshade, and cat's whiskers. These resilient, almost bulletproof species quickly became an unexpected and honestly a super rewarding new focal point for the garden.
And you know what's so incredibly charming about these plants? They are beautiful, tough-as-nails species that you can literally find thriving while being completely neglected on the side of a road or in a public park. That innate ability to just shrug off utter neglect in harsh public spaces makes them the perfect low-stress additions to a home lab. They just want to live.
Next up, Section 5, the sanctuary of routine. This shift towards low-stress gardening really sets up the most profound takeaway from this entire explainer. Way beyond the hard science of soil pH and propagation methods, the actual mundane routine chores transformed into something pretty magical. Spending hours in the garage on a cool night just scrubbing pots, reorganizing shelves, transplanting little seedlings, and maybe having some small talk with a neighbor walking by, it turns out this simple labor held incredibly deep therapeutic value. In fact, the absolute core realization of this journey is perfectly captured in this thought. The real reward is not always waiting for a plant to bloom, but finding calm in the rhythmic labor itself. I mean, let that sink in for a second. In our hyper-fast, always-on world, finding a quiet mental sanctuary in repetitive, mindful tasks might just be the absolute greatest harvest a garden can ever give us. And finally, Section 6, Seeds for the Future.
So with that incredibly grounded perspective, what's next as our gardener charges toward that massive 1,000th post milestone? Well, the game plan for the next 100 posts is super practical and really exciting. First up, the physical space is getting an upgrade, revisiting the garden layout with some new custom or store-bought racks. Then they're skilling up those propagation projects with harvested and bought seeds, purely for the sheer fun of it. And finally, health and weather permitting, a triumphant return to those beloved outdoor field trips.
But here's the thing about those future outings to nurseries and public gardens. They aren't just about hunting down the next rare plant anymore. They serve a much higher purpose now. They are a vital way to genuinely reconnect with nature, offering a quiet, almost nostalgic space to revisit the simple days of youth, all while navigating life right in the middle of a concrete city.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. But before we go, I want to leave you with a question to really think about. As you navigate your own busy life, maybe in a bustling concrete city of your own, what simple rhythmic labor can become your quiet sanctuary? Whether that's washing pots, propagating seeds, or something totally unrelated to gardening, I truly hope you find your own living lab. Thanks so much for hanging out and exploring this with me today. Keep learning, and we'll see you next time.